today we're starting graphing. That means we need to talk about lines. So this is so much more fun when I'm in the classroom, but you will need the next few weeks probably graph paper. If you can find graph paper, it will come in quite handy as we do linear functions. Graph paper, of course, starts with a coordinate axis, the arrows that go vertical and horizontal, and then you have lines that are put somewhere on the graph. One of our jobs is to not only put the lines on the graph where we want them to be, but we need to be able to describe what the line looks like. All right, we got to describe the line. So rather than bore you with paper, pencil, and graph paper, I'm going to try and give you a visual. I'm going to stand up for this. So I'm going to stand up. I want you to think of me right now as the y-axis in a graph. My body's the y-axis. I can stick my arms out. They could be the x-axis. I am like a graph right now. But let's just worry about the y-axis. And here is a line. And this line is just going to be somewhere on the graph. But the line is, I could make this line go all the way around. If I go really fast, it's like a propeller, and I'll take off. But no, this line is on the graph, so it goes up and down on the y-axis somewhere, one of our other lessons. But for now, we want to be able to describe the slope or the slant of the line. As you look at this line from your perspective, it is going up. From left to right, it is going up. We call that positive slope. We measure the steepness of the line, we call it slope. Here, this line's going up, so is this line. Well, how do you know which one's which? Well, we have to give it a number. This has a number of a slope. Let's say this is 1. If the scales were evenly, this would be a slope of 1. That'd be a slope of 2. This would be something like that. The numbers would get bigger and bigger and bigger. If this was a slope of 1, and I went down a little bit lower, it would be a slope of maybe 3/4, or 1/2, or 1/4. They get smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, obviously, if I kept going smaller and smaller and smaller, to 1/4, to 1, ultimately, I'm going to get to 0. And then the numbers start getting bigger again. They go to 1/8. So this would be like, this is 0. Now I'm going down. This is negative slope. Negative 1/8, negative 1/2, negative 1. Then it's going to keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's how slope works. We have uphill slope. We call it positive. It goes up. As it gets higher, the number gets higher. And we'll show you how to do the numbers in the next lesson. As the positive numbers get less and less. So this is all positive numbers, positive slope. As you go this way, now the line's going downhill. As you read a book from left to right, it's downhill, and the numbers they're negative numbers, and they start low, but the negative numbers get higher and higher and higher as you go this way, or the higher absolute value if you want to be technical about it. So, negative slope, positive slope. But what do you do when it changes from negative to positive? So right here we have, this is positive slope. It is getting lower and lower and lower. The number's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Still a positive slope, smaller and smaller. When it gets to here, it does reach 0. A horizontal line has a slope of 0. That's where it changes from positive to negative at 0. Easy to remember. From positive to negative, it's 0. As we have our positive slope, though, as we get higher and higher, the number is reaching infinity. This gets higher and higher, higher and higher. What do you call it when we switch it this way? This is positive slope. That's negative slope. The rule in math is we can't call this 0 also, because then it's 2 zeros. Which one are we talking about? That cannot be 0, and they can't both be 0. So this is the one that's 0. We measure slope by a ratio of the height versus the length, or the rise over the run is what we call that. That comes next, but you do it by dividing. When we get to this part here, there is no run. It's the rise over the run. The run is 0. You cannot divide by 0. That's part of the ratio. Therefore, you'll get all this later. This is called undefined, because we cannot divide by 0. So when your vertical line is the slope is undefined. Horizontal line, the slope is 0. That's the main thing. We'll talk about how you measure the numbers and what they all mean, but that's your first introduction to the slope of a line, we need to be able to describe what these lines look like. Positive, negative, zero, undefined, and that comes from the way you divide the ratio. Thank you for your attention, and we'll talk to you soon. Sorry, I almost forgot. Video ID, 3 of diamonds. 3 of diamonds.